So for this video, this is actually something that we have not talked about in class yet. So this video will be longer than the other helper videos that we've done so far. And this has to do with, this video is for question number 6. I'm going to show you some pretty controversial photos. So these are upsetting, these are disturbing, just as a little bit of a warning. Remember, you only have to do 10 of these total questions. So if you're not comfortable looking at disturbing photos, then you don't have to answer this one. But it is important in the world of photojournalism to discuss these things and to talk about these things. So let's go ahead and look at this question. I'm going to go ahead and pull up, if you click on this, it will take you to a journalism ethics Google slideshow. And this is something we didn't get to before spring break, so we haven't talked about it in class yet. But I'm going to show you some very famous but very controversial photos. And in your answer, you can talk about, of these 4 photos, which would you publish? And what are your reasons for publishing or not publishing these? All right, starting with this one. This was taken in the 1970s by a photographer in Boston. His name is Stanley Foreman, and this photo did win the Pulitzer Prize for photography that year, which is Pulitzer Prizes, as I mentioned to you, are the highest honor in journalism. Stanley Foreman was walking to his car, and he had his camera with him, and he saw fire trucks lining up to an apartment building. And as he approached the apartment building, he could tell that the scaffolding of this fire escape was getting ready to collapse. He saw these 2 people on the fire escape. They were trying to escape from their burning building. And miraculously, the baby survived, but the mother did not. So obviously he was there, and he took the picture when the fire escape collapsed. Now, it's important to know, as part of this story, it's important to know that before this photo was taken, Boston had problems with their fire escapes like this. They had an outdated fire code, and there were lots of dangerous things about their apartments with regard to fire safety. A lot of problems. But nobody did anything about it until this photo was published. They wrote articles about it. People said that they needed to update their fire code, but nothing happened until this photo was published. So, if you believe this photo should be published, probably one of the reasons you're going to give is that it helped change and the city of Boston and make it safer, because the city did adopt new fire codes after this photo was published. Okay, the next photo, again, this one's from the 70s. The next photo is from the 80s. This photo was taken by a young photographer in his 20s. This is in California. He was out actually looking for feature photos. In other words, he wasn't even looking for breaking news or tragedy or anything like that. He just happened to be walking around looking for feature photos. Basically, he was doing the same kind of assignment that you all did for your first event photo. You're just looking for an event, people having fun on a Saturday afternoon. But he went to a park in California, and he happened upon this scene. A child had just drowned in this lake in this park. And of course, this is a photo of the family in absolute agony and grief, looking at their family member, this little boy who drowned. And of course, this is the little boy in a body bag. This photo caused outrage. People said, "I can't believe you would invade this family's privacy like this in their deepest moment of grief. I can't believe you would show the face of a dead child. How inappropriate." By the way, similar accusations were leveled against this photo up here, even though, again, the baby survived. But it's actually not the mom. It's either the aunt or the godmother. There's some discrepancy on who the woman is, but the baby survived, the woman died. Anyway, here people were extremely upset. And just like this photo helped to change the fire codes in Boston. This photo, there had been a lot of drownings happening in California in the 80s. Drownings were on the rise in California. But after this photo happened, guess what? Drownings decreased after this photo ran. And in fact, this photo ran all across the country, and people became much more careful with their children around pools and around lakes and water. Okay, fast forward to the 90s. This is a famine in the country of Sudan in the 90s. And I don't have to tell you what is happening in this photo. This child is starving, and the vulture is waiting for the child to die. And I'm not even going to finish that sentence because you know what happens next. Now, thousands of people were starving in Sudan. The person who took the photo, Kevin Carter, was saying to himself, well, I can't save every starving child, but I can take a photo of the problem and publish it. And then people around the world will rally to try to help Sudan. That is what happened. This photo, as well as others, helped draw attention to the famine and helped bring some relief to the people of Sudan. But people still said, how dare you photograph a child dying who's being stalked by a vulture? Kevin Carter did say, by the way, this photo also won the Pulitzer Prize. Kevin Carter did say that after he took the picture, he ran over to the bird and scared it away and made it fly away. But people still said, I can't believe you would do this. This photo has a tragic ending, and not just because this child is starving. Kevin Carter, the photojournalist who took this photo, eventually committed suicide. Obviously, suicide is a multifaceted problem. People don't just suddenly kill themselves for no reason or for out of the blue, just because of even when something really bad happens, they don't just out of the blue kill themselves. It's usually accompanied by depression and or mental illness and a lot of other factors. So Kevin Carter was depressed anyway, but the fact remains he did commit suicide after taking this photo, and a lot of people said that it had to do with a lot of the pushback he was getting for this photo. I'm going to now look at the last of the 4 photos. And this photo came from September 11th, 2001. We've all seen the photos and videos of the airplanes, the hijacked airplanes flying into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center and the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. And then there was a 4th plane that was actually passengers in that plane rushed the cockpit and brought down the plane in a field in Pennsylvania. But one hijacked plane went into the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York City in Lower Manhattan. Another hijacked plane flew into the South Tower. Both of those towers eventually crumbled. And the 4th plane hit the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. Thousands of people died. Thousands of people lost their lives that day. This photo is called The Falling Man. A lot of people said that no matter how many times you see the planes hit the World Trade Center, even when you see the towers crumble and you know that thousands of people are dying, this photo was too far, because it was someone who, as the plane hit the tower, this person either fell or had to jump out to escape the fire. So this person obviously is falling to his death. And some people said, this is inappropriate, it's wrong. So I want to know, and unfortunately, you have to decide as a college student who has to think critically about these things. You have to decide where you stand, at least if you're going to answer this question on the final, you have to decide where you stand on each of these photos. You might say that some of them should be published while others should not have been published. But you need to give me the reasons why. And let's look back at the question again. For the ones who you would publish, why? Why is the public's right to know more important than the subject's and family's right to privacy? To give you some hints on that, well, with the fire escape photo, it helped increase fire safety and helped upgrade the fire code in Boston. For the drowning photo, the more people saw the photo, the drownings decreased after that. The Sudan famine, it drew world attention to try to help Sudan through the famine. So those are some pretty clear answers why, in those cases, the public's right to know would be more important, and it would be reason to publish those photos. But for you don't have to believe that. You can believe that these photos should not have been published. You can say, hey, we could have. There are other ways to draw attention to these problems. So the ones you would not have published, explain why. I just want to say, though, that for every time you say, well, take the fire escape photo. We didn't have to publish the fire escape photo. We could have just written articles saying that the fire code needed to be upgraded and fire escapes were failing. But the thing is, they did, and nothing happened. But I want you to get into what you believe on this. In Europe, it's different. In Europe, you do have to have people's permission a lot more often than you do here in the U.S. No one's permission was needed to publish any of those photos. All right. Also, in your answer, feel free to discuss other controversial photos as long as you link to them so that I can see which one you're talking about. Also, here's another article that might help from the New York Times. When a picture is worth 1,000 tears. And this is one photo in that collection is from Vietnam, and it shows a child after her village had been napalmed. And she stripped down all of her clothing and ran screaming from the napalm. So that is the explainer video for question number 6. Feel free to email me if you have any questions about that.